It's always fun. Hi, YouTube. Welcome to the stream. We're doing a Greed If story by Echidna. Guys, go follow Echidna. An absolutely incredible individual. Emma, I'll answer that after the video. Just make sure to send it. Guys, if you guys enjoy the content that we're making, make sure to follow, subscribe, like, leave your comments, what you guys think, right, wrong, everything between. I haven't read the light novels. I don't read any of that. I actually just read the Moshiko Tensei special chapter, whatever, a couple weeks ago on Friday, like last Friday, which for you guys, I'm sure you guys would lose track of time as to when that was. But still, like, when it comes to situations like this, know that we're looking at this through a psychological lens of view. This is completely up to chat whenever we watch this. We tend to do this live on Twitch, and then it goes up on YouTube. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in terms of, like, what are your guys' genuine thoughts about the characters as we go through it and we talk about it. Anyway, let's go.
I saw a dream. A dream that wouldn't end. Over and over again, I repeated and corrected every mistake. But before I knew it, I lost count. I died over 100 million times. And yet there was still a place I wanted to reach. A wish I wanted to protect. No matter what, I had to save everyone. And that's why I took her hand.
That ain't even Subaru anymore. That's like Dumbaru. Like, like, coming from a person, I'm sorry, but if you see someone just fucking microwaving themselves around, you know, like, you know, just fucking microwaving themselves around and laughing, you don't take their hand, bro. That's like the last person that you'd want to go ahead and, like, take their hand. But also, yeah, I don't know how else to put it other than, like, in a situation like this, I'm sorry, let's go ahead and, like, we've talked about it, right? Echidna, as an individual, she would more than likely, like, as a character, as she is written, as she is, like, you know, shown in the anime, quite literally. Don't get me wrong, she's thick, right? I was actually on the verge of buying her figurine, which would have been, like, proudly placed right next to the ram that we have here, right? It would have been absolutely fantastic, like, my bunny ram that I have right here. But she's the type of individual that's, like, would go through every possible ending with you just for the sake of trying to see everything, dude. She's the type of individual that if I was with Aldris, we're gonna live your birthday 100 trillion ways. I want to see you do everything. I want to know everything. You know, from the, like, when you wake up in the morning, how you make your bed. If you made it with your right hand, the next time we're gonna make it with your left hand. The next time you're gonna make it with your feet. The next time you're gonna make it with your mouth. The next time you're gonna clench your butt cheeks and make sure that you go over it. The next time you're gonna go ahead and, like, clamp it together in between. Yeah, like Echidna is the type of individual that would go, like, you know, wild with shit like that. But because it's information, it's data. Oh, that's all it is. I'm just gathering data. I get to live, like, you know, by watching all this data fucking unfold. You know. And it's like, oh yeah, that congratulations, you just made it past, like, the bed era. Now you're gonna step out with your right foot. Now you're gonna step with your left foot. Now you're gonna take a breath before you take your right foot. Now you're gonna blink and then breathe and then take a right foot. Now you're gonna blink, breathe, take a left foot, right foot, you know, and so on and so forth. And it's like, whoa. That's some good data. That's why I'm like, don't get me wrong, I probably would have taken her hand for other reasons, right? This is me just being 100% honest with y'all, you know, like, Echidna's oof. But is it a good choice? I don't know, dude. I think that can easily, and it's also this, at what point do you give up autonomy? Yeah. At what point do you stop being you, who you are as an individual? And it's like, oh, I'm no longer Eldris. I, like, you know, I think I eat whatever, but Ed the Wizard is is the one that makes all the decisions for me. It's easier. I get to do that. I get to live perfectly. I get to get the perfect ending. I get to save everyone. You know what that comes from? That comes from like fight or flight, desperation, really manipulative person actually knowing that you're like in the verge of a breakdown. And that's sort of what Echidna is. Echidna sort of knows where you're at in that you know, in that cycle, right? And so she'd offer her hand, knowing full well that you are in the break of, like, you know, a psyche break or anything like that. And if we follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we already know that, like, hey, think about it this way. She is promising. If I was Echidna, this is what I would do. I would promise you, you no longer have to worry about it. You will reach self-actualization. Let me worry about all of this. All of this. All of this. I will make sure you self-actualize. But give me control out of all of this. Deal? Deal? Deal or no deal? I can already still see Echidna doing something like that. Because that's who she is as a character. That's why, like, when people say ReZero is not well written, like, psychologically, I can always point out and say, you're fucking wrong. Like ReZero, of course, it's like the first show that we watched on the channel, and it is very well written psychologically. Like, you can point out to any of these things and start having like a big breakdown on them and why it's important and all of that. Oh, FBI, there are a lot of people out there who trying to say that like there's nothing psychological about it, or that, like, you know, certain things are reaches. It's like, what are you talking about? We can literally discuss this for hours and hours on end, which is why, like, for Echidna as a character, as complex as she is, it's beautiful, man. I love the character. I really do. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue. Sorry, guys. Also, guys, make sure you guys follow Kidnut's video. Or Kidnut's channel, rather. Sorry. I'd sip your tea, dude. Ooh. What if you creep out Echidna? Sorry. What if you creep out Echidna, yeah? Because you're like, a standard reaction is like, here's my tea, yeah? And like, people freak out like when they figure out what it is. But what if you're like, now a piece of you is always inside of me? Like give me more, mommy. Like, oh, that would only Emilia can do. I know, dude. Just fucking like take it to that next level. Oh.
Natsuki's Subaru woke the same as any other
Drink her
day,
glass too.
except a voice was in his head. After forming the contract with Echidna, she's been able to communicate with him through sound waves, and she can watch everything he does through the black crystal pendant hanging from his neck. With Echidna's help, Subaru was able to save the sanctuary, pass the trials, and protect everyone he cares about. But that didn't come without a cost. After dying over 100 million times, Natsuki Subaru was now a completely different person. He's desensitized to a lot of things and no longer fears death. He's become a new version of Subaru that abuses his ability as often as he prefers to. All the while, the Witch of Greed watches him in amusement. This is Kasaneru, the Greed If story.
Kids, you're no stuff. I do it on purpose, yeah, dude.
As soon as he finishes practicing his smile in the mirror, Subaru touches the black crystal pendant he wore around his neck. As he held it in his hand...
So do you think that you would lose... Like, okay, oh, I gotta ask this. How many of you guys actually practice putting on a face in the morning, right? Or put on a... Like, genuinely asking. How many of you guys put on a face when you go to work or when you hang out with other people? What is the true, like, you know, how many faces or mask do you put on when you're out in public and, you know, you're with different people? Do you wear different masks then? How do you know if a mask is falling off? Are you uncomfortable with people seeing the vulnerable side of you? At what point do you think, like, dying so many times? I never thought of it. Oh, here it is, Eidolon. We wear masks as individuals normally throughout society. Yeah. Sometimes we do it unthinkingly. I.e., when, like, if we were hanging out together, we would probably, like, you'd probably be wearing a mask unknowingly, not consciously thinking about it, as opposed to when you're with your parents because you're a different individual. Yeah. Or with the loved one or with your lover or whatever, right? We all wear different masks in order to fit sort of the environment, the theme that we're in, whatever, right? But sometimes people wear masks as protection. They're smiling, but inside they're hurting. You know, Inside it can, yeah, inside they can be going through a lot of pain, but outside they're just smiling, because for them that's how they know how to cope with the environment that they're in, with the anxiety, with whatever. And if they're not wearing that mask, how would people relate to them? It's hard not being conscious about it. I always adjust myself depending on the people that I'm with. Yeah, and oftentimes it's just like an adjustment thing that people like automatically do without actively thinking about it. It's the same thing with breathing, right? Like, that's why I always make the joke, are you guys consciously breathing right now, or are you guys manually breathing? Like, or is it automatic breathing, or are you guys manually breathing? It's coming in through one nose or the other, right? Are you guys taking big long breaths through your, like, you know, like through your mouth, through your nose? Like, how does it feel, right? Is your chest going up and down, or is it your diaphragm, right? Is the air nice and cool, or do you feel that the air is a little heavy? You know, oftentimes when we breathe, it's automatic. We're not actively thinking about the way that we breathe, right? But we adjust our breathing depending on what we're doing. If you're fighting, for example, a minute, 2 minutes in, 30 seconds in, even sometimes for most people, all of a sudden your breathing becomes heavy and you're thinking about breathing, right? Your guards are lowering and you're like, trying to breathe. But if you're talking with friends, it's fucking automatic. If you're high like a kite, you just ate an edible, you're like, fuck, am I manually breathing or am I automatically breathing, you know? But so on and so forth. And that's the reason why I pointed out, because people that have been through a lot of trauma, people who have been in really toxic relationships, manipulative relationships and whatnot, can be experts at wearing masks in order to fit into an environment. Even though when they're crying on the inside or they don't want to go through anything, they'll practice, like, you know, smiling, going through like the things. And people, no, it's not just them, but there is also people who like don't have the social cues or want to learn social cues in order to go ahead and fit in and wear a proper mask. And true, Emma, true, which is why I always ask, what is the real you? If you're watching this and you're thinking like, oh, you're just gonna go over it and like emoji react to the entire series, no, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, we're literally having a big psychological breakdown on this and talking about it. So for example, for you YouTubers that's watching, what is the real you? Without the mask, without worrying about hanging out with others, what is the real you in every regard? Even the mask that you wear for yourself. Yeah, because that is true. We wear masks even with ourselves because sometimes we don't want to confront that. And that's often when our subconscious and our unconscious come together and try and like form a palatable reality that we can live in. But what mask is that for you? What does that include for yourself? And why don't you like, if there are aspects that you don't like about it, what aspects don't you like and what can you do to improve them? For example, right now my desk is dirty. I'll be honest, after the stream is done, I'm taking out the trash. I'm cleaning up my desk and everything because I got to go to work tomorrow. And I got to set up a tablet that I now have for school because I need to, like, you know, for my doctoral classes, I need to go ahead and like stay on top of my schoolwork and all of that. And I have a lot of little steps that I need to go ahead and do. And I hate the fact that like my environment at the moment's a little messy. Because for me, that's saying like, hey, you're lazy. And a mask that I have is like, you know, that whole thing where I might be like psychoanalyzing and everything, but I can see little bits of trash like done around. I'm like, I gotta clean that, dude. Like it's not okay for my desk to have gotten this like this bad, you know. This guy who loves books and bad jokes. When was the last time that you guys were vulnerable with another person or with yourself? When was the last time that you guys had a check-in with yourself? Asking, am I going the right way and what can I do to improve in my direction going forward? What you did was fucked up. Hey, the way that you ended that last relationship was not cool. How can I improve? The way you did this was great. Hey, you healed through a lot of trauma, so on and so forth. When was the last time that you guys have been vulnerable to yourselves in that regard? And we'll continue. Sorry,
and
yes.
Its presence grew stronger and started to pulse as if it was a living thing. The pulse grew faster until it was equal to Subaru's own heartbeat, and that was precisely the moment his consciousness left him. Without a word, Subaru sits down across from Echidna and gulps down his cup of tea with no reaction whatsoever. It wasn't that he had forgotten what the tea was made of, it had just been so long since he cared.
You could at least say hello.
There's no reason to. You're already prying inside my head day and night, so what's the point?
This and that are different matters, you know. Greeting me properly is simply the polite thing to do. After all, I am a shy young maiden, as delicate as a flower.
Did the meaning of those words change without me noticing?
No,
Echidna
not
was
dumb.
quite tolerant towards Subaru's impoliteness, so his sarcasm didn't bother her. She relaxes her mouth into a smile, which causes Subaru to accidentally admire her beauty for a moment.
What's the matter? You're staring at me.
She was a perverse, demonic figure that exuded a sensation of inescapable ruin and destruction, but Subaru still found it difficult to be afraid of her. The two of them talk for a bit, but it wasn't typical for them to delve into idle gossip, so Subaru planned on returning to reality as soon as possible. Before leaving, he tells her that from now on, he's
wouldn't be
removing the
accidental
pendant
for
whenever
me.
he uses the bathroom. And then, despite her pleas for him to stay, Subaru exits the tea party without saying goodbye to Echidna, leaving her with nothing but...
I was gonna say, Joe, she's like straight up just like observing him go to the restroom as well. Bro, Echidna kind of kinky, dude. She kind of into that, what is it, like the... I forgot, people that watch like the like Peeping Tom shit. Imagine him just fucking beating his meat and Echidna's just like... It's rewind time. She had Tommy Bobby. She about to do a whole YouTube fucking rewind and have him do it again. Oh, dude, that's hilarious. Echidna likes what she sees, but also, yo, yeah. I mean, I can see, even in situations like this, because I bet you that there are some individuals out there. For example, how many of you guys have been friends with that toxic ex or that toxic friend? Not because, I don't know how to put it, like, not because like, oh yeah, you know what, like I have feelings for them or I forgive them or any of this, but rather because environmentally they're there. What I mean by this is when you're in high school, yeah, and this is probably the best way to relate it. When you're with your partner, were you with your partner because they met every single one of your expectations for what it means to be a good partner? Or were you with them because environmentally you were closed into a high school where the selection of partners that you may have was limited and they met some of your expectations and you guys just stayed friends, you guys communicated, and then probably after, I can almost bet for a majority of people, unless you stayed with your high school sweetheart, you broke apart because there are other people that met your expectations. It's very similar in a regard like that, but now imagine a sense where you can't escape from that, right? With the Echidna, this is one thing that I'm getting is propinquity will take effect almost instantly. In case you guys don't know what propinquity is, it's how we start to grow attachments with other individuals based on the amount of time, based on the factors of time, cultural preferences, values, so on and so forth that we spend with another, right? So even if you hate me, right? Even if you come in here because you want to shit on me because you're like, I hate Ed, whatever, dude. I'll tell you what, that's a-okay. But if we were locked in a room together, right, or an environment together where we had to see each other constantly, you might just grow to be like, oh yeah, he's fine. He's a cool dude, whatever. You know, I don't necessarily like a lot of his videos or some of his videos, but he's a pretty chill dude. Like, I could go grab a beer with him or whatever because of propinquity, right? Doesn't even have to be romantic feelings, but it could just be a semblance of like neutrality, if that, to positive regards at times. This is often why you get like work relationships and why you get like husbandos and waifus, and why you even get like have you guys heard of the term like a work wife? Or like, you know, oh yeah, that's just my work husband, that's just my work wife, you know, like it's kind of boundary breaking at times, but that's because of propinquity, because propinquity starts to take effect and starts to pull individuals close to even start labeling themselves in certain regards. I think he's too tired to get any kind, even if you don't want to get like, because that's the thing is, people accidentally fall into attachments without even wanting them at times because of propinquity. People will form attachments to you without necessarily you wanting those attachments, which is why I'm like, I'm kind of curious to see where this is going to go. And this is already like, I feel like our conversations are already getting long.
When his consciousness returns, he confirms that only a few seconds have passed, but he still wasn't used to the discomfort produced by the gap between worlds.
Maybe I'll never get used to it.
Subaru spoke out loud, talking to himself, but Echidna was always listening and would often interject with her own suggestions, which began to annoy Subaru to the point that he asked her not to speak with him if it wasn't necessary.
Yes, I understand. I'll be silent except for when it's absolutely necessary. You just made a witch obey you. You truly are a master at this.
Shut the hell up!
There was a sudden knock on Subaru's door, but having repeated this loop already, he knew exactly who it was.
Aww.
Right on schedule, Petra says good morning and explains that she's got plans to go shopping this afternoon. However, she doesn't know if the weather will be nice enough. They chat for a bit longer, and then Subaru visits the courtyard where Garfield was sparring with Reinhardt. Garfield fought with his full strength, but was easily defeated. Too weak to continue, Garfield left angrily to go wash off the dirt his body was covered with. Reinhardt, on the other hand, didn't even work up a sweat, and somehow the grass underneath him had returned to its original clean state. The thought of Reinhardt as an enemy gave Subaru the chills, and that's exactly why Subaru secretly led him to join the Emilia camp about a year ago. By convincing Felt to drop out of the royal selection and abandon the Estrella family, Subaru caused Reinhardt to feel depressed and out of place, with nowhere else.
I see. So the way that you kill Reinhardt is through psychology. Just make him feel worthless, you know? Just make him feel depressed. Have him take himself out, right? Some years ago, my friend really hated me for no reason and didn't cut my relation with him. But before I did, I said, if you keep this, you're gonna lose everyone that cares about it. Some years later, most of my friends that talked to him left him, and others still talk to him but hate him. Yeah, and some people just keep relationships out of just like, I guess, safety for an individual, which can be a little toxic in of itself. But hey, good on you for calling it out, for being toxic and you know, just dipping and finding your own self, dude.
To turn, he accepted Subaru's offer to support Emilia, but after being abandoned by Felt, Reinhardt was never the same. Because of his childhood trauma, Garfield was miserable as well, but instead of working through his trauma and solving the problems within his heart, Roswaal and Subaru excluded him entirely and forced him to leave the sanctuary against his will. If they hadn't, he would have been eaten by rabbits, but the result of saving him was an unstable Garfield whose depression was steadily being converted into rage. Reinhardt became an outlet for him to release his anger, but even that only reminded Garfield of the strength he lacked. Talking with Garfield and Reinhardt wasn't intentional though. Subaru just happened to run into them on his way to the library. The mansion's library was actually where Subaru's daily routine was supposed to begin.
Hey, Beatrice. Sorry to intrude.
Beatrice said nothing and sat in a corner with her forehead pressed to her knees. In the past, she might have greeted Subaru with some form of insult, but now she wouldn't say anything at all.
Beiko! Come on, don't you want to play outside?
Subaru kept pestering her until she finally had enough and told him to shut up. Her voice was hoarse and she almost sounded like a different person. But hearing her voice at all was a big relief to Subaru because typically she wouldn't even speak a single word to him, so today he felt pretty lucky. During the events of the sanctuary, Subaru forced her to leave the forbidden library that she swore to protect. Up until this point, Beatrice had dedicated her entire life to her contract. But now, that contract was broken, and so was Beatrice. In a deep depression, Beatrice spent the rest of her days incessantly sobbing, with a non-existent will to live. Subaru wrapped his arms around her to comfort her shivering body without knowing that he was really the one searching for comfort. But Beatrice hated it, so she clawed at his neck until it bled. Subaru eventually gave up and shut the door behind him on his way out, leaving Beatrice alone once more.
Yeah, I think with a lot of this, if you take away someone's purpose or their main idea, people do spiral into bits of depression. It can be a bit rough, you know. Sometimes a good support system is always needed, first off, yeah, and it takes time to heal from shit like that. Agreed if everyone is depressed. But no, it's absolutely true. Like, you know, for example, if you've gone through a bad breakup or scenario like that, you don't just heal magically from one moment to another. Like, you know, it takes a while, dude. It takes a while for you to personally, like, work through your emotions, work through your feelings, and start the process of healing. But even through that, like, it can be a lot more than that, especially if you were, like, centered in the idea that you need to make a contract or you need to do certain things, right? Who you are as a person, your identity might be broken in a way that would take a lot longer than what most people are comfortable with. And probably, like, you know, if you guys have ever been through a really, really bad depression, what helped you get out of it? What helped you start taking those first steps to come out of it? Was it quick or was it slow? Did you have doubts about improvement? Did you ever feel like it was too much when people were there trying to pester you to like, you know, to maybe even take a first step? So on and so forth.
Back then, I wonder if I should have lied to her. I could have said I was that person.
Saving her life was the right thing to do, though it is a shame that her contract was broken in the process.
Wait, hold on a second. Isn't it your fault that she ended up this way?
Well, of course, I will take partial responsibility for the child's solitude, but my intent was certainly not to force misfortune upon her. I do hope you understand. Even if devastated by regret momentarily, there will come a day where that child is free again. In due time, someone will accept her. Perhaps that someone is you. There are an infinite number of possibilities, after all.
Finished with his conversation with Echidna, Subaru ran into Roswaal in the hallway. Roswaal appeared to be in an excellent mood, and there was a certain element of respect in the way he addressed Subaru. Roswaal had come to appreciate Subaru's utility and respected him for all he's accomplished. Subaru wasn't too happy to be working with him though, especially considering all the trouble he caused at the sanctuary. However, Roswaal was too great an asset to be cast aside. So reluctantly, Subaru cooperated with Roswaal, and the two of them worked together towards achieving their respective goals. Because Roswaal changed the way he acted towards Subaru, Rom did as well. She no longer insulted him or called him Barusu. She spoke with courtesy in a dignified manner as any maid would. However, there were no traces of familiarity or friendliness in her voice. She was distant and treated him as if he were an esteemed guest whom she had no prior connection with.
Think about it this way: for Ram, and which makes sense. For Ram, Subaru was. We're watching Kidnap's ReZero Greed F story. For Ram, Subaru was the agent of change needed to challenge the ideals of her master, right? To challenge the ideals of Roswaal, right? Masha Tank, you take that back. Ram over Ram any day. Like, Ram needed, like, in a way, she used the encouragement of Subaru, right, to go ahead and start taking the steps needed to go ahead and, like, one, be open about how she feels, and two, be open about the confrontation aspect of a scenario like this. What happens, honestly, true Greenpeace, auto over everyone, what happens the moment that, let's say that you have let's say that your partner is really, or someone that you care about is really into, like, Warhammer 40k. Fuck it. Their Warhammer 40k stance, it's where they're spending all of their money, and, like, you're getting the confidence and you think that you're going to get the support needed to go ahead and, like, confront them about it. Be like, hey, why don't we go ahead and start rationing things out, and, like, it might not be healthy. Maybe we can lower it, so whatever, right? But all of a sudden, right, the person that you thought was going to help you is now, like, buying fucking Warhammer 40k figurines and bonding with the person that you thought was gonna, like, give you the... No! Can you imagine that, dude? You would just be like, fuck, alright. Like, you know, that's a big step back. Like, that's a big connection that would be almost severed in a way. And yes, you would still have to follow the rules of respect and whatnot, but still, oof.
In the room with Rom and Subaru, Rem slept silently in her bed as she has been for the past 2 years. At Subaru's request, Rom left the room, giving Subaru some alone time with Rem. Well, Rem and someone else.
Hey, Echidna.
For you to call me is truly a rarity.
Could you remind me how to wake her up?
Echidna explains that there are 3 possible ways to save Rem. The first is to find and question the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony and try to make them reverse the effects of their authority. However, finding them would prove to be enough of a challenge, and defeating them would be even more difficult, and we don't even know if the authority can be reversed. The second option is about as equally unlikely as the first, because it would require cooperation from the Sage, which, according to Echidna, isn't a realistic expectation either. So we're really only left with the third option, which is to obtain the blood of the divine dragon. The omnipotent power in the dragon's blood would certainly be enough to wake Rem from her sleep. However, the dragon only offers his blood to the ruler of the kingdom.
And that's why you absolutely must make Emilia the ruler.
Emilia! Subaru knocks on Emilia's door, and Emilia knocks back from the other side. She lets him in, and they have a nice little flirtatious interaction, but Emilia changes when she notices the scratches on Subaru's neck. Immediately, she realizes that Beatrice was the one responsible, and then a large quantity of mana surges out of her body. The air starts to...
Let me guess. She fucking, like, her parataxic distortion, just, like, the first fucking season was extreme parataxic distortion from Subaru to Emilia, right? To the point where you're almost like in real life, like, a Subaru would kind of be a creepy guy. Let's be real, dude. In real life, if you had someone like Subaru just, like, don't get me wrong, like, consistently going after you in that regard without really knowing the reason why, you'd kind of be like, you know, but... I'm guessing because of all the events that happen and whatnot, now the parataxic distortion has flipped to where Emilia's now like, anyone that harms him or anything like that just makes her go fucking wild. Clearly, I think this is clearly something that needs to go, and I guess this might be a hot take. I think because of Emilia's innocence, it makes her easy to manipulate, which is often the real reason why I wonder, like, people who are like, oh, I wish Emilia was real, because, like, that would be my girlfriend or whatever, right? Especially, like, season 1 Emilia. I question what they specifically like about that version of Emilia, right? Is it the fact that, like, you know, they're kind? Or is it the fact that, that you're looking at the way that mentally they're not as mature as other people? You know, and that's sort of where my mind is like, because, like, there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, great character, she's growing and everything, right? Especially in season 2 and whatnot, but you can still tell the innocence in season 2 where she thought hand holding, you know, and all of these things, and, you know, will bring a baby, and you're just like, what that's why I'm like, found your Bochi React vids. Oh, appreciate it. Wanted to say I'm loving your commentary, helping me experience the story from a different point. I appreciate it so much. Legitimately, I hope that, like, the Bochi React videos are, like, at least have helped out, like, in learning something about yourself or learning something about, like, the show in a different perspective. But awesome, dude. If you don't mind me asking, like, how'd you find the channel, like, in general? Did you find it through, like, Reddit or a recommendation on Twitter or something? Like, I'm curious. Or I'll search on YouTube. But appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for it. I don't remember. Hey, that's A-okay. But still, I appreciate it, mate. Sincerely.
Freeze, and Emilia loses control. Soon, the mansion and everything around it will turn into ice.
Emilia, calm down. Everything's all right. Hey, Emilia, look at me.
Maybe I just YouTube Butcher Reacts. Hey, that's awesome, dude. Hell yeah. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys that watch the video and comment. Even the not so nice comments. Still, hey, taking some time out of your day to comment, it means a lot. I appreciate you guys. Yeah. If you don't mind me, oh, actually, if you're on YouTube, hey, we do have a lot of the Bochi Reacts that are yet to go on YouTube. They should be in the VODs here. If you want to check them out, feel free, dude. Like, that's what it's here for, you know? I mean, comments help the algorithm. Yeah, that's right. Also, for all my people here on Twitch, comment on all the YouTube videos. It helps the algorithm. Comment like anything. Literally just spam comments. It's fine. I appreciate y'all. Help the algorithm out.
His body and desperately called out to her. Eventually, she snapped back to reality after seeing Subaru smile at her.
Oh.
Earlier that morning, Subaru had practiced his fake smile in the mirror because he knew Emilia would need it. If
mask?
she had continued to freeze the mansion, Reinhardt would have had no choice but to stop
Appreciate
her,
it,
and
points.
Subaru probably would have had to use Return by Death again. So luckily, the fake smile worked, Emilia calmed down, and the mansion was safe again. Emilia was so different from before.
I wonder if... Because, like, if she's changing in this way, do you think that he would still love her in that regard? Or do you think that he loves the idea of her? Snap back to reality. Right? Like, and that's an aspect of that. Because where if you have to practice fake smiling for someone...
because what she saw in the trial brought back painful, repressed memories that continue to haunt her relentlessly. And because Subaru took the trials for her, she was never able to overcome her traumatic past, resulting in an unstable, incomplete version of Emilia that was now entirely dependent on Subaru.
Yeah,
I
makes
bet
sense.
it would be more convenient for you if she were an emotionless doll that followed your every command.
Subaru tried his best to ignore Echidna, but sometimes it was difficult to do so. Echidna disliked Emilia and would often make rude comments when she saw her. This really bothered Subaru, but not as much as the guilt did. He couldn't help but wonder if perhaps Emilia would have been better off without him.
Yeah, fan, that's
Whether
what
or
I'm
not
like
he
thinking.
made the right decision was a question that constantly plagued Subaru throughout his daily life.
But honestly, that's such a common issue that pops up, not just for Subaru, but for a lot of people, where people fall in love with the idea of someone and not necessarily the person itself, and acknowledging that a person is open and willing to change, and a person changes throughout their lifespan. Like, for example, even myself, right? I'm currently doing a lot of my doctoral stuff, and I'm changing as a professional, as a person, whatever, right? I'm not saying no one stays static. We all keep growing and evolving based on our life experiences, based on what's happening around us. And if you fall in love with the idea of a person, at what point do you let go of that idea and you search for another person that might fit that gap? That's sort of why parataxic distortions can be so rough, dude. Because, like, once you put a person up on a pedestal, you're not necessarily putting the person on a pedestal. You're putting the ideal version of them on that pedestal. And that's hard for anyone to live up to those expectations, right? And of course, guilt, depression, stress, all of that.
It was never enough. The possibility of regretting something was terrifying to Subaru. After having a bit of a panic attack, Subaru hurried back to his room. He didn't want anyone to see him like this, but when he opened the door, he found a dark-haired woman sitting on his bed, smiling. Elsa was no longer an enemy. She wasn't exactly an ally, but in any case, she didn't pose a threat to Subaru anymore. In fact, Subaru was now her employer. She's been working behind the scenes doing the dirty work for the Emilia camp, and with Elsa's assistance, they were able to kill the Sin Archbishop of Greed and capture the Sin Archbishop of Wrath. However, Elsa's current assignment to track down the Archbishop of Gluttony was unsuccessful.
Oh, Elsa. You were outside earlier, right? How was the weather out there?
Elsa replied that the weather was fine, and Subaru nodded in confirmation, and then asked her for another small favor.
I see. Thank you. Now, please take your knife and lop off my head. Oh, and try to make it painless.
Elsa was a bit confused at first, but after confirming that Subaru was serious, she followed his order. Subaru's blood sprayed across the room and his consciousness faded away. With his
I mean, if it's gotten to that point, yeah, my dude would literally just continuously... Here's the thing, though, and here's sort of where the issue comes in, where if you feel like you have to give the perfect response to everyone, there's no such thing as perfection. Right? There's no such thing as having all the knowledge, because there's always more knowledge to have. So in a situation like that, you're literally only like, and it's sort of like an insane cognitive distortion that the character is starting to form, right? It's all or nothing. Not just for himself, but for Kidna in that regard, right? And for others, because he didn't have the answer for Petra earlier on. So that's why I'm like, the cognitive distortions in this world must be insane, where he has to have the right solution, the right answer for everything, and not necessarily like be able to let go. It is sort of greedy, absolutely, yeah. But at the same time, like, his mental state must oof.
his final thoughts, he felt sympathy for whichever maid would have to clean up the mess. Elsa would sometimes question his sanity whenever he asked her to kill him, but would still obey him anyway, making her an excellent means of using Return by Death. When Subaru woke up, Echidna confirmed that he had reset to earlier that same morning. She also asks him why he used Return by Death, but he doesn't give her an answer.
For Petra.
Once again, Petra knocks on the door and says good morning to Subaru. And just like in the previous loop, explains that she has plans to go shopping this afternoon, but doesn't know if the weather will be nice enough. However, this time, Subaru has a proper response for her.
Rest assured, Petra. The weather's going to be nice today, so you don't need to worry.
And that was the response he had died for. Subaru sacrificed his life to give Petra that information. A small, insignificant detail such as the weather was worth more to Subaru than his own life.
Yeah, but it's also, you know, at least when you start to take existential therapy into account, like, what is the value of your life if you're willing to give it away for just getting a wrong answer, right? And if you're going through all of these perfect loops, like, is your sanity even intact at that point? Or is the you that you think you're giving off to everyone just a shell of who you are, right? Or have you already technically died and you're just a robot towards someone else and following through the routines of that, right? Where are your goals and actual aspirations at if you're willing to go ahead and die and re-die and re-die and re-die and re-die and re-die just to give out the perfect answers when there's no such thing as perfection. Reality slipping, yeah. Yeah. Here's the thing though, a lot of people, like, especially when you, like, I don't know how to put it. People hyperfixate oftentimes in specific scenarios, specific moments, right, in times. And even through a traumatic event, people will replay that event 1,000, 100,000, a million times over, changing their narrative bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit until that narrative fits what they feel is happening to them, right? Doesn't mean, by this I don't mean like, oh, it's trying to downplay any form of trauma. No, not at all. What I mean is, for example, even a breakup, right? There's always two sides to a breakup as to what specifically happened, you know, that day, that time, that whatever, situations, relationship, traumatic event, or whatever. But we as individuals, we shape our narrative. Like, we start shaping situations, we start shaping comments, relationships, so on and so forth, to fit a specific set that our mind can interpret quickly and be able to, like, retell that story in a way that, like, not benefits us, but shares our feelings during that time, right? I.e. making the other person a villain, making it feel that way. But in a situation like this, where life or death doesn't really matter and you're doing it 1,000 times over, repeating for just one question makes me wonder, like, what else haven't you done? And if that's the case, if you're willing to go that far for just one question, are you even truly searching for a perfect ending? Or are you just wasting time trying to go ahead and, like, search for, like, any aspect or semblance of yourself, right? To create his own ruin. Yeah, because think about it this way: if you, like, ran with your mistakes, I'm sure at some point in time you'd be able to figure some stuff out, right? But if he's repeating the same fucking day 100,000 times over to get the perfect ending, is he making any realistic progress? It's just stagnating. You're getting information, sure, but at the same time, what that does to a person, oof, oof. And what is a perfect ending? And to whom is that perfect ending? Exactly. Is this a perfect ending for Subaru? And if so, has that perfect ending changed from the Subaru that once made the contract with the kidna to the Subaru that is now? That's, yeah.
Meanwhile, atop the hill in that meadow of green, the lonely witch let out a sigh.
Using your own life to protect others is noble indeed. However, your ability, returned by death, is a double-edged sword. If the lives of others become too desperately consequential, you can no longer value your own.
With all the afflictions and hardships that Subaru went through, he was unconsciously led to rely on the witch. And with Subaru's return by death ability at her disposal, Echidna held the world in her palm.
You truly are someone who can satisfy me.
She swore to wholeheartedly assist the boy with his own goals however she possibly could, but at the same time also intended to satisfy the inexhaustible curiosity of a witch. So from now forth, suffering and unreasonable fate would descend upon the boy for all eternity. His suffering would become her satisfaction, and that was the witch's love.
Even so.
A proposition that would remain sempiternally unsolved, and yet an enigma that would forever enthrall her.
Why must love always fade?
See, as an attachment therapist, hold on. Why must love always fade? Love doesn't always have to fade. It just depends on the way that you relish in love. See, it can now we can have a fucking debate as to what it means to go through something, right? Because hold on, yeah. A lot of people, love can grow, yes, and it's actually in the little moments that you can actually genuinely find love, and it just depends on the aspects of love that you're looking for. Because, for example, for her, what does love mean? If she's saying love, why does love have to fade? Love doesn't necessarily always have to fade. There are a lot of people who, I don't know how to put this. They get into a relationship, they get married, and then later on down the road, I'll answer that, Eidolon. Later on down the road, like, they're in a loveless marriage. But why are they in that loveless marriage? Because a lot of times in situations like this, let's take infidelity and stuff out there. Let's just go to basic communication. Are they still dating one another? For example, if you're in a relationship right now, are you still dating your partner? Or have you become complacent? Are you going through the same everyday routines, like routine, that you're not breaking that routine and paying attention to them? People that, people in marriages that, like, all of a sudden start going downhill, you'll see that they get into a sense of complacency, including in knowledge, i.e. academias, yeah, people in academia in general, where they get too complacent in their own knowledge, where outside knowledge is like, no, I ain't accepting that, whatever. I'm not willing to go ahead and, like, take the time to go ahead and do certain things, right? Because it's breaking that knowledge. You have to be open to exploring different avenues, trending in the little bits. It's also Echidna's perspective, yeah, which she is, but I'm talking about Subaru and others in general. Anyone can get over any kind of love, and Subaru has almost infinite time. Yep. Absolutely, yep. Ed would have taken Echidna's hand just to give her therapy. Honestly, I would love to go ahead and, like, I think with Echidna in general, it would be an interesting back and forth that I'm pretty sure we would have as to what it means specifically for her to have knowledge. And what does that work with? What does that work for someone that can live for, like, say, almost all of eternity? What does knowledge add on to your base if you're just going to live infinitely without any sense of purpose in that regard? If data is purpose for you and you have infinite amount of time, then you don't really have a purpose. So what purpose? Yeah, so on and so forth. Does the if story give you any new... Not necessarily. It fits pretty much everything I've stated in the seasons and, like, the reaction stuff. Like, pretty much what I thought of Echidna beforehand still stays as Echidna beforehand. It really didn't change much in that regard because I've always thought of Echidna like that. Same thing with Subaru. Like, it's a possible... Is it a possible route? Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't Echidna be too confident in her own position and be obsessed with their own goals that it would be hard to work with her? Well, what you would do, Eidolon, because there are a lot of people that come into therapy who are way too stuck in their ways, and so you start examining the evidence, right? Which is why I'm sure that this would turn into, like, a long, like, essentially sessions of breaking down one another's arguments, if that case, right? Not even arguments, but, like, essentially long discussions over certain topics and finding not even necessarily, like, it'd be mostly like CBT that would be used for her. Oh, absolutely, I would drink the tea. FBI, absolutely, I would drink the tea. But, like, a majority of it would be like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectic behavioral therapy to try and go ahead and break down a lot of her core schemas in order to go ahead and break down those cognitive distortions. Because with her, you wouldn't necessarily try and do something open-ended like narrative therapy, because she'd walk miles around anyone. You can be the best narrative therapist in the world, and she would manipulate her story into the perfect being that no narrative therapist would get anything. You could try attachment therapy, but then who is she really attached, right? So the best outcome in a scenario like this is to go ahead and break down her core schemas through either schema work, cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectic behavioral therapy. And then you could probably go into attachment or some other style of work in there. So you'd start mixing stuff in. Echidna will only lose if Subaru stops to care. True. I mean, she's with him, so right. But anyway, guys, if you guys liked the video, let me know your thoughts. What was your guys' impression when you guys first read the Greed If or really saw the Greed If story? Guys, make sure you guys follow Echidna, incredible content creator. Managed to go ahead and like put out a lot of these stuff that like everyone goes wild on about. So make sure that you guys go ahead and give him a follow. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. Come join us on Twitch. We do this every Friday and Sunday. And with that, dude, I don't know, dude. For me, it's expanding a little bit and just like affirming a lot of the beliefs I had about these characters, you know. I mean, Subaru is probably one of the most important pieces in the 5D game. Subaru is essentially the immortal pawn. Subaru is the immortal pawn in the middle of like a 7-person 5D game of chess, where no matter where he goes, when he captures a unit, it turns it into his side. And he started in the middle of the field, in the middle of a playing field, and everyone else already started with random moves on the board. It's a good way to think about it. The sloth is of 2 parts, and I think the last watch mode. Subaru is a pawn with the power to repeat your turn, essentially. But guys, I love you. I appreciate y'all. Practice some self-care. Come join us whenever you have a chance. And I think we're about to move on to the next thing here.